How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Tableau part of this week's online session. So before we get started, there's a few reminders for this week. So this week, we don't have a session, but you guys should still be working on the case. Round one is coming up soon, as well as we're going to have an alumni panel on February 18th at noon. So figure, if the Tableau video is 30 minutes, the Canva video and prototyping video is 30 minutes, and then this alumni panel is 30 minutes, then we're covering all our bases there. And then along with that, when following along in the Tableau and Canva workshops, just make sure that you send an email with like whatever files you used to follow along after you're done with it, just so you get credit for participating in CDP this week. But yeah, without further ado, we could start with Tableau. So all of you should have by now downloaded Tableau and downloaded the file that I sent out, the 2019 file. So after you've downloaded that, open up Tableau. It should look something like this. And then go to a file, and then you have a lot of different options here. The two most common that you'll find are Microsoft Excel and text file. So Excel is Excel, text file could be .txt, .csv. So we're working with a CSV file, a comma separated values file. So we're going to want to go there and then go to downloads right here. And then as you can see, 2019 is right here. So we'll open that up. Now, this data set is, as you can see in the lower corner here, it's good to take a look at the data set before you start trying to visualize it and manipulate it, just so you know what you're working with. So it's basically just a list of countries or regions in the world, the scores that they have overall, and then their GDP, social support, health and life expectancy, freedom to make choices, generosity, and perceptions of corruption. So all scored on a scale against each other relatively. So yeah, basically once you know what's going on here, you can use the left side right here to start importing your data. If you open 2019, it's going to be here. But the cool thing about Tableau is if I had another CSV file or another Excel file that I wanted to implement, such as, let's say, this weather.csv down here, I could put it over here and then use filters to combine the two data sets into one set that I'm going to manipulate. When we think about cleaning data and things like that, we usually think of Alteryx, but Tableau could be used at an elementary level for that as well, which is pretty cool. So moving on from that, so this is your data source screen. So this is where the data that you imported are going to be here. You can drag more tables. Then we're going to go on to the worksheet, sheet one. So this is really where you're going to analyze the data. So you're going to take your columns and rows and visualize it here. And then if you look at this 4 panes right here in the bottom left corner, this is your dashboard. So we'll get to this. Unexpected error. We'll get to this a little bit later, but basically what this dashboard does is you can take multiple sheets and visualize them next to each other, and it's a great way to kind of put together, for lack of a better term, a dashboard that emulates the project or data that you're working on. So yeah, so now getting into the data sheets. We can see here that on the left we have a bunch of different, kind of the columns and rows that we were looking at before, and they're distinctly blue and green. So what I found is most time your blue is going to be like your string values or your table columns that have words in it, in this case, country or region. And then the green ones are going to be your numbers and things that you can manipulate that way. So we could start out by just kind of messing around with the data, see what we have, and moving and dragging. The good thing about Tableau is that everything is usually on a drag basis. So you could drag it from here up to where it says rows, and you'll see all of the countries come in with the rows. So this rows and columns up here are going to be your main way of importing the data into the sheet. So for example, if I wanted to see each country's GDP per capita, I could put that in the columns, and then I'll see it like that. So moving from here, there's a bunch of different, if you hit show me in this corner, it usually just pops up automatically. There's a lot of different ways that you could visualize just these two pieces of data against each other. You can do kind of like a standard thing here. And as you can see, when I switched from the bar chart to the black and white table, it jumped from the columns into the marks right here. I'll do it one more time so you can just catch that. And so down here, it automatically assigned the text to it so that you would see the text next to it. So Tableau is very smart in when it knows what you want to see, it'll automatically do it for you. When using this table and when it jumps, so for example, if I put the bar chart there and I want to see GDP and I want to see generosity and I want to see overall rank, this is kind of redundant how there's three bar charts next to each other. And so if I jump to this table, because this is how I want to see it, as you'll see, it'll automatically put those into the measure values. And then the measure values is the name, basically the titles of each of your columns. Heading on from that, just some more basic stuff. So we can go back to the bar chart, and then if you want to delete something, the way that I found is easiest to just kind of to scroll it like that and delete it. So here we have just overall rank and country and region. So if we make that, like we were talking about before, into this type of chart and then use the measure names to get the column header, then you could take the countries and regions and sort them A to Z, or reverse Z to A, or you could even go to sort, and then instead of data source order, you could source it by a nested value. So for example, right here, it automatically did it by the number, the country rank. So you see field name, overall rank, and the aggregate, the sum. We don't really have to worry about the sum and the average for this data packet because they're all the same, because each, like Finland only has one value. It's not like you're averaging together a few values for Finland, but it's something to keep in mind if the data set that you end up using on your own has multiple numeric values for each instance of like a word. So yeah, so from there, we can then switch it back to bar chart, do the same thing here if we want. Nested sum, there you go. And then if you want to see what the lowest ranked country is, South Sudan, I guess. But yeah, so the bar chart would probably not be the best visualization for rank, because as you can see, it's just going up by 1 every time. But it's still a good thing to know in case you're doing it for example, GDP. But yeah, moving on from that, some other visualizations that they have are this one with the squares. So if you take notice over here where it says color, size, label, detail, and tooltip, those little icons will correlate. So right now, the GDP is being related by the size of the square. So Afghanistan has 0.35, Albania has 0.94. Albania's square is bigger than Afghanistan's. But what's also cool is if you put another column in there, such as generosity, and click on here, it'll do it by some generosity and some GDP. So the generosity is the color and the GDP is the size. So like we saw before, the size difference, and then there's also a slight color difference. You can see it a little bit more with Armenia and Australia, how Australia is a little darker than Armenia is. So you could compare two different things in just one data source like that. So yeah, so there's a lot of different things. You can do the same thing with this. So the text is the country or region. The color is the generosity, and then the size of it is the GDP per capita. So it looks like Qatar has the highest GDP per capita at 1.6, then Luxembourg, then Singapore, but they're all relative in size. So let's say that this is really what I want. I know in this instance with countries, it doesn't really make sense because they're so close in size. But if we were to make another sheet, we can start working on another model, and it'll save the sheet automatically. So sheet 2, if we come here and we have country or region in the rows and GDP per capita in the columns, like we started with before, but we wanted to visualize this on a map to really show what we're talking about. They have 2 different types of pre-formatted maps. This one shows the data points as dots. So for example, and as you can see, like I said before, it'll automatically switch it to what it's, so the columns and rows are switched to latitude and longitude, and then the GDP and regions are switched to the detail and the size. So you could see countries with larger GDPs are going to have larger circles, small circle versus larger circle. You could also change that, like I was talking about before, to color, and it'll create a map like this where the darker countries will be countries with higher GDPs, and the lighter countries will be lower GDPs, and then some countries will be like grayed out because they're null values. So for example, Greenland, I mean, I guess it would be part of Denmark, but if it wasn't really included in the data set, I guess. But yeah, moving on from there, now that you have the whole world map kind of formatted, if you haven't already excluded the values that you don't want to see in Excel, you could also do it here. So if you take your country or region and you filter it, you can see here all of the countries are checked off. So you can manually check them off like this to exclude or include any ones that you want, but you could also use a custom values list. And let's say I'm looking for Italy. I could search Italy and check it off, hit OK, and it'll just zoom in on Italy. So it's pretty cool. And then you could edit filter and then just click all, and it'll bring you back. You could also do it manually. So for example, if I want to look at kind of Eastern European countries, I could click on Russia, and then if you hold Control, you could click multiple at once. So you could start clicking them all like that. Oh, something else that I didn't show before, and then you could just hit escape to escape if you would like, is that if you go to the filter and you go to the search, custom values list search, let's say Russia, right? Only one thing comes up. But if I look up Slovakia and Slovenia will come up because it isn't necessarily a search for the entire word. So you could check off both of those as well. And then you can have that and zoom in. But yeah, so the maps are pretty cool to mess around with. Of course, you could keep adding stuff or excluding stuff just by going like that. And then if you exclude everything, it all goes away. So if that happens to you, just hit edit again and then select all. So these maps could be very useful when talking about case competition specifically. I know that I've used them in a multitude of case competitions. Now that I'm looking for the decks that I used them in, I can't really find many of them, but I found 2 of them. So this world map might not be too good because it shows so much, but you can even, if you look here, so I did a project on Enron and like prices of electricity. So I separated it by state in the continental US. I used the exclude feature to exclude Alaska and Hawaii. And I was able to visually show, oh, look how, more expensive California is than Nevada. and show the whole map like that and use it for my presentation. You could also change the color scale, which is something that I did not show in Tableau. So if you exit out of show me, you could see this sum GDP capita right here. You could edit colors, and then you could either choose, or they have a lot of different ones right here. I usually go for the temperature diverging. I feel like it's the most useful, but it's really personal preference. So yeah. And then the other map that I was going to show is a case composition that I did for Airbnb. This one isn't too good, but you can see the gist of it basically. The top 10 cities where Airbnbs are, New York City, and there's a few in California, there's a few in Texas. So if you're trying to convey where you should expand, maybe this is a good way to show where you're already concentrated. But other than that, that's really it for the maps. Definitely a very, very cool tool to use. I know it impresses the judges a lot because Tableau is something that is used in data analytics and in the workplace. So if you could kind of get a handle on it now, you're already a step ahead. But yeah, moving on to the dashboard. So as you can see, the sheets that we did are on the left right here. So sheet 1 and sheet 2, you could take sheet 1, drag and drop, sheet 2, drag and drop, and it'll create this dashboard where it's interactive. You could size them to be different. If I want that small, want this big. And although these two don't really go together, you can make kind of a comprehensive thing if you use individual bar charts and things like that. All right, so now that we have kind of covered the basics of Tableau and the map functions, we're going to move on to some more advanced kind of dashboard building. So this is the part where I hope you guys follow along, and you can either add this to your existing Tableau workbook. You could just add another data source and then the tabs that way, or you could do this in a separate book like I'm doing here. As you can see, we have our book 1 here from before, but for this file, we're going to use Microsoft Excel. So remember how I said the two most important ones are Excel and text. So we'll go on Excel. And then here's the second data set, the sample superstore data. So we're going to open that up. Okay, so now that we have our superstore data set open, as you can see, since it's an Excel file, there's multiple sheets in the file. We're going to be primarily concerned with orders. People and returns don't really have a lot to do with the data that we're going to manipulate, so we just kind of leave them there. But like I said before, if you wanted to put them all into one data set, you could drag them through and use the operators to kind of assimilate it into one full data set. So as you can see here, we have order by day, which is going to be important for later. We have different cities and postal codes, and all the way over here, we have the sales, which we're going to be primarily talking about. So we could go into sheet 1 again, and in here, we're going to want to drag and drop the rows and columns like we did before. So the first row that we're going to do is the category of products, right? So as you can see here, the company that we're talking about does furniture, office supplies, and technology, 3 main categories. And then with those 3, we're going to see the sales for each. So it's automatically going to show the sum of the sales because that's the most intuitive option. Like we talked about, Tableau is very, very smart. So it'll put kind of what you're looking for there before you look for it. And in this instance, we're going to want the bar chart. It shows a lot as far as the subsectors compared to each other. So I think that would be important for our dashboard. So this already tells us a lot. And if we want to look at this at a more granular level, we're going to use a filter. So we could filter this by region. So we're going to drag the region over from the left. And you can see we have the central, east, south, and west. So we could select all and then hit OK. And then if you want to edit this, you could obviously, like we talked about before, edit filter, OK, and the data will change. What's cool about this, though, when adding a filter is that you could hit show filter, and it'll show it on the side here, so you don't have to keep going into there. So you could play around with this and show, let's say we only want to see the West. I guess furniture is more popular in the West than it is in all the other segments. So that's something cool that you could kind of take a look at and play around with. When you guys submit the email version of your Tableau worksheets, it doesn't matter what you submit, just as long as you're kind of playing around with it and learning how to use the basic functions of Tableau. So from there, we can go back and make our dashboard. And oh, we got the error again. But so an important thing that I forgot to mention about the last dashboard that we made is that you can actually change the size. So for example, if you want to make this full screen, or just a desktop browser, which would be like a Google thing, PowerPoint size slide. So let's say that we want to put this on a slide, we're going to do PowerPoint, and then we have more room to work with. And so after that, I'm sorry, I got to move my window. We could hit layout, and we could kind of change that differently. But it also has, once we add in our sheet, we could go to layout and change the way that it is. So we can make it horizontal, we can make it tiled, and we're not really going to use these for this, but it's a good way to kind of panel everything. But going a little bit more into depth, if you X this out and you hold shift while you drag this in, it'll actually make it kind of free flowing. So you could kind of size it how you want after that, move this around as well. And that way you're not really confined to how big the slide is. You can make it smaller or bigger if you wish. So right now this still works in our dashboard, which is definitely very cool. But our dashboard's looking a little bland. So we're going to add another sheet. So if we go down here and hit new worksheet, here we have the same thing that we've been talking about this whole time. So let's say we want to talk about sales again. So we're going to drag sales to the rows. And then let's say we want like a line chart of the calendar year. So we're going to go to date, specifically order date. Oh, there it is. And you could also tell what type of data this is, because it has the little calendar right here. So if you're looking for a date, you can look on the side and see, oh, that's a calendar, and the ship date's a calendar as well. So it kind of helps you out with that. But if we put order date in, it automatically does by year. So we have 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. You can see their orders are going up. But if you want to see it more granular, you could hit this little plus sign right here, and it'll show you by quarter. And now these lines are going to chop it up a little bit, so it's not going to be a continuous line, but you could keep going all the way to day if you really wanted to, which will go on forever. But for this, after that, we can collapse this a little bit. I think month is pretty good. So we could take out the quarters, and we could keep the years, or we could delete the years. I think that's fine and split up, so we could keep the years for this one. But yeah, so now that we have this, something cool that we could do is, before we add it into our dashboard, go back to sheet 1, go on our region filter, and go region, apply to worksheets, and all using this data source. So any worksheet using the orders data source will now be filtered by region. So for example, if we come over here and we hold shift and drag it here, and we have this sheet like this, we can now, if we hit west, it'll change, or south, or east, or all. It'll move with this data. So that's really, I know in the last example, we didn't really show the full power of the dashboard, but that's really what you're looking for, is to be able to change both sheets with one filter and kind of show it like that. Something else cool that you could do, if you click on this, if you hit use as a filter, you can click the filter, and then let's say October 2017 or November 2017 looks like our highest point. If we wanted to see what type of categories we used in November 2017, we could click that singular data point and it'll show us this is all from November 2017. And then we could even further cut it down more and say, well, what about the West? Or whoops, there we go, west of November 2017. And it'll show us they basically just sold a lot of furniture. So you play around with this. In your examples, you don't have to use sales. With this data set, there's a multitude of examples that you could do. But yeah, this also goes the other way. So if I click on here and hit use as a filter, if I just want to see furniture, then this is just the furniture graph. Or if I just want to see office supplies or technology, it'll change for that too. So this tool is very, very powerful when it comes to huge data sets and filtering and being able to actually visualize it. And then of course, with these, so if you hold this little gray box up here, you could move it around. But with these data sets, you want to be kind of neat. So you could add the titles. If you double click, you can name this monthly. And you could obviously change the font and everything. Or you can add if you look over here, text, you could add text at the top and then make this, the title. And looks like it's in the corner, but yeah, basically here it is. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. I actually ended up dragging it onto the axis, so that's why it's stuck there. But there's a lot of different things that you could do with Tableau. Like I mentioned a million times, I think that this example really shows the power of it. And yeah, that's really the end of our Tableau workshop. If you guys have any questions, be sure to include it in the email that you email to consulting@mcgbinghamton.com. I'll try to do my best to answer it. I'm still learning with Tableau as well. But it's a really cool tool to use, and it's really convenient that we get it free as students. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the Canva workshop and the alumni panel further down the line this week. But yeah, have a great day.